Ever since I made the What I Will Watch for Fall of Anime 2018, many have told me, Chibi, it's disappointing that you said you would skip the Sumo series. And after a lot of people basically saying, give it a shot, give it a shot, give it a shot, give it a shot, I finally decided to, sit down and watch the first episode that came out today. Personally, I had really no idea what to expect going into this, besides what some told me to try to get me to watch it. The only thing I knew going into this series was that it's a sumo series, obviously from the title, and it's a sports manga, and it's in Weekly Shonen Jump that's been around apparently for a while longer than My Hero Academia from what I have been told. And its manga sales apparently are very average. It's nothing spectacular, but nothing too bad. It just, in a flat area to where it's pretty average. But many told me to give this series a shot to see if I would like it, because I know many of you out there know that I do like sports manga and anime. Even though I don't always review every single sports anime or manga that comes out, I do typically read a lot of them or watch a lot of them, and they're pretty enjoyable series. Haikyuu is a really fan favorite of mine, or Yomushi Pedal, Baby Steps as well. There's some really good sports, anime and manga out there. So, obviously, since I do like sports, and I've actually never seen a sumo series, I decided, you know what, I guess let's watch the first episode of this. Now, when you think of Japan, if there's one sport that you think of when it comes to Japan, it's probably sumo wrestling. I know for a fact when I think of sumo wrestling, I think of, Japan. That's the country I think of when I think of sumo. And it's odd, honestly, that I've never really actually been really into sumo. Like, I've never really looked too deep into sumo wrestling. The only thing I really know about it is that there's a ring, and if you're pushed out of the ring, obviously you lose. That's the only thing I really knew. And I knew you had to be a very big build to be able to be a sumo wrestler, because you have to have, a lot of muscle, you have to have a lot of weight behind you to be able to hold your ground in the ring and then being able to push someone else out, your opponent. It takes a lot of stamina, it's a lot of endurance. Most of the matches from what I've seen, or at least I know of when it comes to sumo, is about endurance. And so I didn't really know, a whole lot going in, and so it definitely was a unique first experience for sumo wrestling. So, to talk about the first episode, it instantly reminds me of Haikyuu. I don't know why. I haven't really looked at the studio to see who is actually animating this, and if it's the same studio that worked on, Haikyuu or not. But I do have to say that when it comes to my first impressions, just looks department and all that, it does remind me of Haikyuu. There's a lot of, certain line art that was done throughout the first episode that does remind me of Haikyuu, and I was very surprised about that. And even though I'm not really into sumo wrestling, I did actually get a little bit excited seeing some stances that the characters made. Like when you see the main male character, Ushio, he gets his stance down right at the beginning, and you just see, this aura around him. I really liked that scene. It really was epic, by the way. I was very surprised. I didn't think I would get those type of vibes from the series, at least in the first episode, but actually I did. It really surprised me, and I was like, whoa, this really is, not that bad of a series. Personally, after watching the first episode, I do think I should give it a chance. I know that now after seeing the first episode, it doesn't seem like it's dull, it doesn't seem bland, it does seem like there's something really good going on here, and I do like the presentation behind the main male character and, one of the support characters, a part of the club. I do like the introduction of that and the conflict that was in this first episode. It was kind of different from what I am normally used to when it comes to the sports genre. But I do also have to admit that when it comes to this sumo series, I personally don't think it is my favorite first episode from this anime season. I mean, this happened to go up against some really strong series. I mean, JoJo is a good example, Index Season 3, and that's not including other series that have yet to air. So obviously, sumo, it has a really strong competition, this anime season. If it would have came out probably last anime season for summer of anime, 2018, this probably would have been a big contender to stand out amongst everything. Probably one of the best series of last season. So that does speak a lot about sumo in its first episode. I'm not saying that, it's a bad series. I'm just saying that it has a rough and big competition this season. If it was in last season, it would have dominated, besides Overlord and, My Hero Academia. So, like I said, speaks a lot about it. But okay, to get into the conflict of the first episode and what it's about, obviously it's about sumo wrestling. The conflict is a little bit standard, but different in its own way. Usually, the main male character, main female character, whatever, joins a club that's kind of like an underdog. A club that really doesn't have a whole lot going on. Usually, they were once, at one point in time, a very strong school, and then they fell out of grace and are not really strong at all. That's kind of what the start of this first episode is really about. The school that our MC goes to, Ushio, like where he goes, is a school that honestly doesn't really have a good sumo, club. And so if you're going to that school and you love sumo, you really shouldn't go there for sumo, because you're not really going to probably get far at all, because there's not really even a team or anything. So it matches the typical description you would see in a sports manga. There's no problem with that, but the presentation of it is very similar. Now, in terms of execution, I do like how the conflict was handled with the delinquent and Ushio, and how that conflict was settled to be able to win the club back. So, basically, one of the main characters, I'm assuming, that's probably going to join the club eventually, maybe in the next episode or a couple episodes down the road, he had the entire sumo wrestling club under his wing. Basically, he just turned it into a delinquent hideout, just being able to do whatever they wanted, and it wasn't really meant for sumo at all. And the only dude that actually liked sumo really couldn't even go there to do what he liked to do. So, there wasn't really a sumo club at all to begin with. And obviously, our main male character, he wanted to uphold the honor of sumo, and he wanted to win the club back for a friend he just met, someone that's into sumo wrestling just as much as him. And so obviously, he does a match with the dude, and he actually wins in the end and gains the keys to the sumo club and gives it over to the dude that was there to begin with, and then this is where the start of the story begins. So I think in terms of what the episode is about, it set the presentation up for how this school, obviously, it doesn't have a whole lot going on. There's not really a big club. They need to gain members to be able to do something, because I've seen enough anime, enough slice of life anime and sports anime and manga and all that to know that you have to have, I think, about 4 or 5 members just to be able to have an actual official, club. Not just for sumo, but for just any club. So if you don't have those many members, you don't have a manager or whatever, obviously you're not going to be able to get that far. And I'm going to assume the girl that was introduced at the beginning, and then we also saw at the end of the episode, is probably going to be the manager of the club. That's my guess. I've just seen a lot of sports, manga, and anime, just to know that's typically what usually happens. A pretty female character, most likely, is the manager that actually just watches over the club to make sure everything's okay. Now, speaking of which, I do have to say, in terms of action-wise, I was very surprised on how much action there really was. Yes, I know this is a weekly Shonen Jump series, I know it's a sports manga, and I know technically it might as well be like a wrestling series, but even then, though, I was very surprised by how well done the action was. Like, when you see Ushio go up against Yuma, I think that's his name, and he beats him or he's taking hits by the dude, it was pretty... It felt very masculine. I don't know what to say, but it was really surprising with how it looked so manly while watching this. And honestly, like I said, I'm not that big of a fan of sumo. I'm really not. I don't really care much about the sport. I know there might be sumo fans out there. Forgive me if I'm, putting you down, making you feel bad, but I'm just not that big of a fan of it. But gotta admit, watching this episode, I was like, yo, this is cool. I actually like this. And I do like the main male character's objective. It's very stereotypical for a weekly Shonen Jump MC, but at the same time, everything is set against him, which I do like that fact. The world is not working in his favor, so let's get into that. So, apparently he wants to be a Yokozuna, which is pretty much like, let's say, the equivalent of a Pirate King, or, I want to be the Hokage from Naruto, stuff like that. Basically, the main head honcho of all, like, the #1 spot of whatever place they want. In this case, Yokozuna basically means the best sumo wrestler. And it's stated in this episode that you have to have a certain height to be able to be a Yokozuna, or even a sumo wrestler to begin with. I mean, if you don't have a certain height, you can't even be a sumo wrestler. So you're never going to be able to reach a Yokozuna status if you don't even have the qualifications to be able to even become a sumo wrestler, which that's what's wrong with our MC. Our MC is a short guy that obviously may have the build, have the strength and all that to be able to, stand up with professionals, but he doesn't have the height. So obviously the official officials that run the sport, the professionals, they probably won't allow him to become an official recognized sumo wrestler. He might be able to compete maybe in, like, high school and all that, and, official, like, little tournaments and stuff in high school, but when it comes to actually wanting to become pro or something, or real big tournaments with, big guys and all that, he's probably not going to be able to do it. So I feel like what's happening here is that the MC is going to be used to some form of change in the sumo wrestling society, in the community of sumo wrestling, basically saying that you don't have to be a certain height to be a sumo wrestler. You can be it, just you'll be in your different weight class or something. Because when you think about, let's say, boxing or wrestling and all that, regular wrestling, there's weight classes, like the heavyweights to the mediums to the lightweights and all that. Usually there's a different class and weights and all that, and I feel like maybe that's what's going to happen to the sumo wrestling stuff, is that there might be a certain height class or whatever. I don't really know. Like I said, I don't really know much about sumo, but I'm assuming he might introduce something like this to where he will be able to participate and everything will be a-okay. So my overall thoughts, did I like what I saw? Yeah, I liked the first episode. I do think that this sumo anime definitely has a lot of potential to be an extraordinary series. Honestly, I'm kind of surprised it ain't that popular. I mean, I guess when I think about the art design and what it's about, it's not necessarily as eye-catching as something like Haikyuu or something like Gintama, One Piece, My Hero. You get my point. It's nothing as eye-catching as that, because sumo doesn't seem like you could really do anything too interesting with it. The only people I think that would really get into sumo wrestling stuff would be probably people that already have a fascination with it because they're really interested in just how sumo wrestling is done, or if you're a wrestler or a boxer or whatever, you might like sumo wrestling. So honestly, I feel like this is a very, different type of series, and I can understand why it might not be as popular, but even then, though, I'm just surprised that, I really haven't heard much about this series until now, until the anime pretty much was coming out, so it's kind of crazy. But let me know your thoughts in the comments below, how you felt about the first episode. Did you enjoy it? Did you hate it? Be honest. I'm kind of curious to see how all of you felt about it. I mean, are you going to watch it? I mean, are you going to drop it? Be honest. How do you feel about it? If you enjoy my content, please subscribe. If you like this video, please leave a like. And if you want to get notified for whenever I upload a video, please click the bell icon down below. And with that, Chibi out.